Well, the year was 1932, and I was about 2.5 years old. I lived in Salt Point with my aunt and uncle on a chicken farm, and he delivered eggs to the neighbors as well as people, his regular customers. So I was always with him because my parents worked at the state hospital and therefore couldn't take care of me. So I was very well taken care of by my uncle and aunt, and dearly loved my uncle. He was, whatever he did was, I had to be with him. So I frequently heard political talking, conversations. I didn't know who these people were because obviously before television, these faces were totally unfamiliar. I had no knowledge of who these folks were, but I heard certain names over and over again. And Roosevelt happened to be one of them because my uncle was very impressed with him when he was governor, and he just admired the gentleman. And so when he heard that, and I don't even know how we heard about this occasion, but he was the president, who was not the president then. He was planning to do some campaigning at the Chapel Corners Grange in Hyde Park, and my uncle wanted to attend because it would give him an opportunity to talk to Roosevelt, and or he called him Franklin, like he was a friend, and apparently he considered him a friend. During the Depression, it was important to know to trust your politicians, and he definitely trusted Franklin. And so we traveled into the Grange meeting and met the politicians, and somewhere along the line my uncle had been chatting with this gentleman, and I was certainly, as a 2-year-old, wasn't paying attention, but he kind of prompted him. Next thing you know, my uncle plopped me down on this gentleman's lap, and I heard voices talking politics, as was so familiar to me, and I heard this voice say that the next president was going to be Herbert Hoover. Whereupon I, with my 2-year-old sized hand, promptly turned around and said, "No, no, no, President Roosevelt," which meant Franklin threw back his head and started laughing because he just loved this little red-headed baby who was telling everybody within distance, hearing this little squirt talk about President Roosevelt. So it was a big thing in our family because that story was told over and over and over, and I heard it frequently because it was a fun thing to talk about. So they talked about me. I did nothing else significant in my childhood, but I slapped the president to be. So of course, when we were in school, I went to all through Arlington schools, from first grade right on through graduation, and that's where my husband and I met because we went to school together at Arlington High School. And we did come up here one time on a school bus tour, and I don't recall the occasion, but we were here as maybe 7th or 8th graders perhaps, and as nonchalant as could be, we saw Eleanor, and Eleanor's waving to us school kids, and with that she got in her car and promptly ran over one of those barricades, and she was sort of known for not being the best driver in Dutchess County. So the boys, of course, were hysterical, laughing, and we were not impressed with Eleanor's driving, but then again, none of us could drive. But we did enjoy the fact that this very famous lady just ran over the barricade. We used to see the Roosevelts around, and they were very normal people. Whether it was John on a Saturday morning getting his big, huge bags of dog food, and taking them out and putting them in this little Ford pickup. No, it wasn't a pickup truck. It was a little Ford coupe, and I mean, they were just normal people. And so the Hyde Park people just got quite accustomed to them. The only time that we were impressed was when the suits arrived, and that was during the war. And I didn't live in Hyde Park then. I lived in Arlington, as I said, Arlington schools. But we did see the Secret Service. And when they were around, they were the only guys in suits. So they were very out of character. If they had formal-looking clothes on, then obviously they were from Washington. They were not Hyde Park people. So I can't even think of other occasions specifically that we had encounters with the Roosevelt family. But I visited the big looms that Nellie Johannesson used to weave their clothing for their suits, their heavy fabric. She did the weaving on these big looms, and that to me was very impressive to know that people had handmade clothing. Like if you were in Ireland or England, you had hand woven clothing. So as I said, from time to time we did have occasions to hear about the Roosevelts or see them, but they were just very normal neighbors, which is very nice to have that feeling that they were normal people.